Welcome to Tiger Claw Radio, everybody. This is your host, Critical Failure. I was looking at my Steam account today, and I did an appraisal to see what games I owned that you couldn't buy anymore, and the list is really shocking. I thought it was going to be like 4 or 5 games. It was more like 20 to 30. Alright, so I'm going to go into that a little bit later on. On top of that, we got some van casting, we got some Atari talk, we got some this, we got some that. And we got some chip tunes. This week we're spotlighting Weird Bananas. Weird Bananas was a chip artist I discovered on U Collective last year. He's got several albums out and quality chip music. So to start with, the album is called XXY, and the track's called Code Red. You guys are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Alright, you know what it is. We're going to start things off by heading back to the Vancast. I like to get the Vancast going early, because I gotta be honest, I don't remember what I talked about at the beginning of the week. But anyway, let us not waste any time. Ah yes, Monday morning. It's nice out today. It's like 55 degrees, there's not a cloud in the sky. It's a shame I'm going to work and not, in a park or something. But quite a weekend it's been, guys. Let's start at the beginning. Civilization 2. Sid Meier's Civilization 2. Alright, let me turn back the clock. Quite a few years, actually. Once upon a time, my good buddy Hemrock sent me a complete inbox copy of Sid Meier's Civilization 2 Gold Multiplayer Edition. Whew. Alright, so, nice, shiny, we'd say a holographic big box PC game. So that we could play, a little two-player action. Well, Hemrock and I re-collaborated. We dusted off that old box, and we got a play-by-email game going of a scenario that he dug up, which is pretty cool. So I've kind of got Civilization fever after not really having dug into that game too deep in quite a while. So that's been fun. Apart from that, I picked up a new laptop over the weekend. I got a little guy, an Inspiron. I can't remember the model number, to be honest. I want to say 8300. But it's a little tiny laptop with an 11.6 inch screen. And I think the design was, it's barely more than a tablet. It's basically just a tablet that runs Windows and happens to have a keyboard attached to it. Because it's small and it's super, super light. The hard drive space, it's sort of built to operate entirely from the cloud. So in terms of a hard drive, raw, they gave it 32 gigabytes and that's it. 32 gigabytes and it's flash storage. So not much in the way of hard drive space. And I'm pretty sure it's got a mobile processor, like the processor is done with mobile technology, which is fine. Because when I got this thing and brought it home and set it up, what did I do with it? Of course I put GOG Galaxy on it and immediately started playing GOG games. Because why not? So now I have a dedicated Daggerfall machine, which I gotta say is pretty sweet. Whole thing weighs about 2.5 pounds, so it can go everywhere with me, which is really what I needed. I wanted something that I could have, I could bring with me everywhere. Because I had a laptop, but I had a laptop from 7 years ago, and although it can still do a lot of things, that thing was a beast. It was big, it was heavy, and it wasn't very portable. So this should solve that issue. And something I find funny about old computers and low-end computers is, like, I was talking to a friend of mine years ago, and he's like, yeah, I have a computer, but it's not really for playing games. It can't really handle games. I've come to the decision that if you got a computer, it can play games. We can get something up and running on that thing. If you got an old Mac, I'm sure we can find some sort of Mac-compatible game from the Mac versus Windows boom. I call it a boom era as if it's like that's not a thing anymore. But if you got a computer, man, it can play something. I got a USB drive that I keep in I keep on me all the time. I have a little USB drive that's got DOSBox and probably about 60 games on it. Plus a few Windows native games, portable installs, like FreeCiv. I keep FreeCiv on it, as well as some other things. Hang on. Give me a second here, boys and girls. Oh, what happened here? I don't know how well you can hear me, but it looks like somebody hit a deer and they sent the cops out to clean it up. Because I definitely just saw a couple police officers dragging a dead deer off the road, which is not something I typically see. Gotta say. What was I talking about? The officers of the law dragging a bloody deer carcass made me lose my train of thought. Old computers. Yeah, if you got a computer, it can run something. And then I started talking about my USB drive and some of the stuff it has on it. So yeah, I keep a little USB drive, and that's going to be, if you got a computer that can run any version of Windows, at least powerful enough to run DOSBox, then I can get it playing Master of Orion. So I don't buy into the notion that I got a computer that can't play games. We'll find something, man. So, yeah, so of course I bought a computer just like that. It's not really for playing games. No, but we'll get something running on it. That's kind of the case. So, Daggerfall works. That puts me in a good spot. So, at least I can play Daggerfall. There we go. I was worried about holding the phone because I was afraid I was going to get in trouble with the cops. There we go. Can you hear me now? Is that better? So I put a couple hours into Daggerfall over the last couple days. That's a pretty cool game. I'm kind of getting the feeling that my dedicated Daggerfall machine will probably switch games before too long. I was pretty much just trying to make sure that the GOG Galaxy client worked, as well as, make sure I could do something. But I think I might make the switch from Daggerfall over to, one of the Might and Magic games before too long. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll get hooked on Daggerfall again, and that's what my game will be. But it's neat. It's neat having a little underpowered machine that I can take everywhere, and it makes me thankful that I maintained a GOG collection all these years, because now I got a ton of stuff that I can play on it. All right. I think I might be winding down the Vancast for today. I had I don't know if I talked about this when I recorded last week, because I did. It's Monday morning, so I put together last week's TCR 2 nights ago, and the opening portion was just recorded 2 nights ago, so I can't remember if I talked about this already. But over the weekend, I fired up the Atari 2600, and I was playing Centipede and writing scores in my book. And my children, as children often do, wanted to be part of the action, so I was happy to oblige. So we passed around the joystick. We had a little high score battle, which was a lot of fun. And my daughter, who is now 4 years old, for the first time got a score penciled into my my tome of high scores. The very same book which I started recording in 2008. So that was awesome. And I think what's weird is, so she's 4 and her brother is 8. She ended up beating him out. She got 7,000 points or something. And I think he topped out at 4,000. 7,000 points in Centipede, meaning she knocked out the first Centipede entirely. The screen changed colors, and the second one started coming. She wasn't able to do it again, but that happened. So that was awesome. That was my first family 3-way battle in an Atari game, recorded in history as something I can look back on. I was very happy about that. There's very few places in my high score book where I've got scores registered from other people. I've got a couple scores from my wife, maybe 2 or 3 over the last 10 years. And I got some skiing scores from my son from 2 years ago. And then I've got maybe 1 score from my friend Engie from Berserk. And that was probably recorded in 2012. And that's it. All the rest is just me. So, once again, Atari news making it onto the air. Atari, I wouldn't say news, but Atari talk. So now it's time, as I draw closer to the highway, to discuss what I would be playing if I was absolved of all responsibility and able to go home. Well, I wouldn't go home and turn on a video game. I'll tell you what I would do. I would take my new laptop, which I have in my bag here, and I would go to the park. And I would sit on a bench in the park and I would play Daggerfall. Just fire it up. Why not? It would be good. And you know what? I bet I could even tether it to my phone and run the GOG, connect to the internet, and then run GOG Galaxy if I wanted to and register my time. But I wouldn't have to do that because I could just sit on a bench and play some Daggerfall on my dedicated Daggerfall machine. That's what I would do. And with that, I'm going to send you guys back to the Panther Studios, where you don't have to worry about getting on the highway on Monday morning, and where you don't have to worry about getting ready to put in your 8 hours. Unless you do, unless you're listening to this on your way to work, in which case, sorry about that. Hang in there, guys. I'll see you back there. That reminds me, I still have yet to do my turn in the Civilization 2 play-by-email game that I'm working on. It's been good. It's really not. It's put the fire under me again to play strategy games again. So my hat is off to Civ 2 for that. All right, quick reminder that this is a Patreon-sponsored show. Thank you guys so much for giving of your resources to help keep me coming back every week. People who support me, I give them early access to the show. This is being recorded on Friday, so these guys will have it tonight. And I also read them off in a distinguished hall of gentlemen here on the podcast. They are Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, Six Health of Fury, and the Cartridge Brothers. Thank you guys very, very much. The song's called K is for Carnage. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Tuesday morning Vancast. I can't imagine this one's going to be a long one because I'm feeling really sour today. I do not want to go to work, guys. Between scouts and Weight Watchers and all sorts of evening responsibilities, there's not a whole lot of time for anything right now. But thank goodness for play-by-mail, because I did manage to wake up early and get my Civilization 2 turn in. I played, before bed, I played a little Daggerfall on my new laptop. And when it comes to Daggerfall, at this point, I feel like I'm sleepwalking through the first couple of hours or hour or so. You gotta get out of that dungeon, and you gotta get to the first town, and you gotta talk to Lady Brisbane, or whatever her name is, and you gotta sell your gear at a pawn shop. Those are the first three things that, like every Daggerfall run, those have to be the first three things. And at this point, I'm sleepwalking through them. And in my opinion, you got to take your time in that first dungeon, because if you try and plow through it, what's going to happen is you're going to leave the dungeon without enough loot. And you need loot so that you can buy a cart or a horse or something. So, I didn't crawl the entire dungeon, but I cracked enough skulls, I think, to say I did a good job in the first dungeon. Didn't have enough for like a straight up horse, but I bought a cart so that I can store loot. And oddly enough, when you buy a cart, you can still ride like the horse part. It's very strange. Like when you are switching your mode of transportation from traveling on foot to traveling by horse, cart is also an option, and when you pick it, you just end up on a horse. So it's like, why? I don't know. Daggerfall is a weird game. Very weird. But I did that, and I ended up, you go to meet that first NPC lady. You meet her in like a random town. It's not the same every time you play through. So after that meeting, that's when Daggerfall as a game really opens up, and then you can take your time and go do whatever. So I ended up in some random town after that meeting. Started looking around for quests, and the first quest I got was broken. So I don't know. That was all the time I had. I kind of ran out of time right after that, but I feel like I need, like, the Daggerfall world is, you know, as they say, the biggest game world, but I feel like I need a game world that's a little bit more compelling for me to explore, perhaps. I don't know. That's what I felt last night. Sometimes when you're in that situation, you just have to peel back the surface a little bit before you get hooked. So, we'll see. That might be the case. One thing's for sure, I'm gonna have to do some dungeon crawling and some grinding. I'll have to look for some of the dungeon landmarks. But you know, it was nice to play on the new laptop, which I don't know if it's a Windows 7 thing or what, but it corrects the aspect ratio. I get side letterbox on when I run Daggerfall, so it looks in the 4:3 aspect ratio that it's designed to be at, which I thoroughly appreciate. Running it on my Windows 7 computer on a widescreen monitor, it just stretches the screen out, and I always thought that looked really terrible. So, oh well, at least it looks good. Alright, so this is usually the bit I do at the end, but I guess this will be the meat of what I got to say this morning. And that's, if I was absolved of all responsibilities, what would I go back and play? Now, when I answer this question, a lot of time is just, the concept is simple. Well, you know, I'd probably go back and play some this or that. But on a day like today, where I really don't want to go to work, and I'm really making myself do something that I don't want to do, the concept of what would I do if I were at home, that sort of thing starts to dominate my thoughts. So right now, I think if I were at home, it would be a big cup of hot tea. I would sit down on the carpet in my office. I'd fire up the PS2. And I would put in Army Men 3D. I went to the Army Men games on Steam when they released them, 4 or 5 months ago, and I had a lot of fun with them. But I got this game, Army Men 3D, for the PS1. I've got that in my collection, and I picked it up at like a thrift store for $1. And I've had it for a couple of years now, and I've never put it in the machine. I remember playing it briefly back when it was new, but at this point I'm just holding on to it and not playing it. And something about that game this morning has gotten me thinking, yeah, that might be cool. That would be one thing I would play. I think it'd also be nice to fool around with Civilization some more. But to be honest, I submitted my turn. There's not a whole lot else I can do until it's my turn in the play-by-email game again. So, Army Men 3D it is. Or rather, going to work it is. But that's what I would do if I was at home. Where I really want to be right now. I'll tell you, man. This is an example of me having to really scrape to get out there. So, but I'm doing it, man. We're making it happen today. No matter what. Be that as it may, I'm going to send you guys off where it's comfortable, where you don't have to work, back to the Panzer Studios. See you there. I made it. I lived. I did what I had to do, and now I'm back. Alright, guys, we got one more of these, then we're going to shoot it over to the failback. Stay with me. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. What is this, Wednesday morning? Thursday morning? Something like that? Alright, gang. I sat down and watched the latest AVGN where he talked about Earthbound. It was the longest regular season AVGN he said he's ever done. It was like 33 minutes or something like that, 40 minutes. I don't know. I wanted to talk about Earthbound a little bit. This is a game that people have been, it's been a beloved game for a long time. All right. And I remember back in 2009, Derek Alexander dropped his Earthbound video back when he was like my favorite YouTuber ever. And when that came out, he didn't give too many direct details as to some of the weird stuff in the story, and he was pretty vague about it. But he said it was like the best game ever, so I gave it a try. I probably only hung in there like an hour and a half, 2 hours or so, but I don't know. I never really got to the part where it became the best game ever. It was a game that, to me, I knew a lot of people loved, but I don't know. I couldn't quite peel back the surface. You know? One of the things James showed off in his video was like a couple of the blurb reviews from the video game magazines at the time, and you could tell it was kind of the same thing. It was like, oh, a fun romp through a Barney Barbie world or something like that, like kidsy cutesy sort of thing. They never quite got to those late game stages where everything got really bizarre. So what do you guys think of the few people who listen and comment regularly when it comes to Earthbound? Am I alone in this? Is this something I should revisit? Because on the other hand, Derek's video came out in 2009. That's a lot of years ago. It's almost 10 years ago. And I think that might have been the last time I legitimately tried to play Earthbound. So I don't know. I would be willing to try it again. But, yeah, I think I would be willing to try it again. I don't know. I'm debating in my head how I would go about doing that. Because here we go with these $100 cards. Oh, goodness. Buying an authentic cartridge and playing it that way is just something that's just not on the table. It just isn't. So, I don't know. I'd have to figure that out. There's a lot of options when it comes to these old Super Nintendo games, but I don't know. Whatever. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to go out of my way to play this game now? I don't know. This is something I'm genuinely interested in hearing opinions about. A lot of questions when it comes to podcasts and YouTubers. It's just like, hey, list your favorite game down in the comments. Do you like video games? Go down in the comments and tell me a story about video games. It's like, everybody likes reading comments, but this is one where it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. So, could use some input. Let's see. My Civ 2 play-by-email game rages on. That's been fun. I put in another turn for that this morning. That's been a good time. A couple nights ago, I played good old H1Z1 again. It's still alive. It hasn't died yet. You can only play it in the busy peak hours, but it can still be played. A buddy of mine from work and I got together and we did some duos, which was great. It's such a better game than Fortnite. It really is. Everybody loves Fortnite because I feel like because it's like TF2, and because it was free at just the right time. At that time, H1Z1 was still like $10 or whatever it was. But yeah, hang on a second. None of that matters, though. I think all these Battle Royale games are going to be gone in a year or two. There was a game that came out several years back called Shoot Mania Storm. Shoot Mania! Do you like to shoot? Well, this is a Shoot Mania. It was like a shooting game version of Track Mania. And I really liked it, but it didn't last very long. It was a game that was like geared up to be the next big shooting esports kind of thing. And if I describe it on paper, it sounds an awful lot like an early version of these Battle Royale games. Something that came out even before the Arma 2 mod. You had, well, slightly different. This one had a control point in the center. Okay? There was a control point in the center, and there was a storm, henceforth Shoot Mania Storm, that would circle around the arena, bringing the combatants closer and closer together. Now, if you wandered out into the storm, instant death. I think the big difference between this and Battle Royale games was Shoot Mania Storm was designed to be quick games. The whole game of that only lasted a couple minutes. It did not have a great big expansive map, and it did not have hidden weapons elsewhere for you to find. Everybody started with the same weapon, and there was only one weapon to be had. That was how they kept the playing field even. I liked that game. I still like that game. Excuse me. Every so often, I still go in and try and get a game going, but it's one of these games that died fast, but still has like a handful of people who play it on a regular basis. So I can't always sit down and say, hey, I'm going to play a copy of this. I'm going to play this game tonight. The best I can do is just pop in into the servers and see if anybody's playing at a particular time. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But that sounds an awful lot like the whole Battle Royale craze. And when that came out, I thought it was amazing. Elimination-based deathmatch where people were forced together so you couldn't like hide. And there was a reward for being aggressive. That's cool. It's a good game. It's a game I think that deserved better than it got. So, now we answer the question that I like to close every Vancast with. What would I be playing if I were absolved of all responsibilities and back in my comfortable office, able to just play some games? Well, I'll tell you, before I left for work this morning, I had this moment where I was in my office. I was stuffing my pockets, get my phone in my pocket, get my keys, get my wallet, all that stuff, the stuff that's with me every day. And I stopped in my tracks and I looked up at my shelf where I had a pile of Xbox games and PS2 games, and a lot of it I haven't played yet. And I just stared at it, and it was quiet. And I had a handful of stuff I needed to take with me. I was just looking at my games. And it's just like, in that moment, in time, it really got under my skin that I didn't have any time to play video games. I really wanted to just drop everything and sit right there on the carpet and be like, all right, we're gonna try Ghost Recon 2. We're gonna try Soldier of Fortune. That's what we're gonna try today. You know what? We're gonna play some more Bloodwake. But I couldn't do any of that. I got my stuff together and now I'm going to work. Because that's what I do. Shoulder my responsibility and I take care of business. Unfortunately. So what would I do if I were back in the office? I kind of want to play Black Dawn, which has been like a display PS1 game for me for a little while. I know that's not a new game. I've had that one for a few months now, but I think I only really sat down with it one good time since I bought it, and I would like to try it again. I figured I'd fire up Black Dawn. I die really fast in that game, so I'd probably play Black Dawn for like maybe 15 minutes or so. After Black Dawn, I would head over to my big stack of PS2/original Xbox games and just start chipping away. Of those, don't know what I would play, but I got a lot of stuff. You know what I haven't played in a long time either? I haven't played Final Fantasy X2. That's a game I wanted to get into. I was happy to get a Final Fantasy game, and I feel like that one had like a rocky start to it, but I feel like that's another one I feel like if I push hard enough, I could get to a good game inside. Well, alright. That's all I got for now. I'll see you guys back in the studio. I mentioned at the top of the show that I went through and looked at my entire Steam library and compared it to a list of games that have been removed from Steam. I wanted to pick out all of the games that I had that you couldn't buy anymore and just make a list. And the list was huge. Some of the games that are gone that I didn't realize were gone. Dead Island, which has been on sale many times. That's no longer available. Neither is Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter or Advanced Warfighter 2. Or Hawks, the Tom Clancy's flight simulator game. What else on this list? Grand Theft Auto and Grand Theft Auto 2. Those are games that are gone from Steam that need to come back. This is something about the Grand Theft Auto series that always bothered me. I got into GTA huge, in a big way, in the era of those first two games, the pre-GTA 3 era. I probably played those games more than any other GTA game. And what kills me is they still appear in the Steam library. Like if you look them up in the store, there is still a store page for GTA 2 and the original GTA. You can't buy them, and they're not in the GTA Complete Pack anymore. Because that's how I got them. I got like the GTA full set at the time. This is back before GTA 5 came out. And it had 1 and 2 in it. It was great. Supposedly those first two games are freeware now. But I seem to remember if you go to the Rockstar page and try and download them, there's a lot of like invasive information, like they want your social security number and stuff like that in order to actually download them. And on top of that, let's not forget, there was a London 1969 expansion for the original Grand Theft Auto, and that was dope. I had that on the PS1. I would love to play that again. And to be honest, these days, I have no idea how I would go about doing it. So, what are you going to do? Alright, gang. So this is the part of the show where I like to take advantage of the fact that we're a small operation. We're just a little website, a little show, a little organization. So, if you want to, have a conversation, you got any questions, comments, anything you want read on the air, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment on TigerClawTV.com or thenextround.net. I see them. I read them. Let's see what we got. Hemrock wrote us some emails, which is awesome. He started by writing, in addition to... Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to go slower so I can keep them reading skills up. Let's try this again. Hey, Critical Failure. In addition to Neo Geo Mini, I recently found out about the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection that is planned to be released sometime this year for the Nintendo Switch. What surprised me is they're planning on releasing both arcade and home versions of different games. The one that caught my eye is the home version of Crystalis. I am assuming that will be the NES version. That was a great game. Have you played it? Speaking of the Switch, what are your thoughts on the Nintendo's newest system? Any plans on a purchase in the near future? Why do you think Nintendo has not brought the Virtual Console to the Switch? Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. Alright, now Hemrock wrote a follow-up to this that I'm going to go right into because he answered some of his own questions, and then we'll lay in some comments after that. He wrote, CF, since I last wrote you, I've discovered that Nintendo has no immediate plans to bring the Virtual Console to the Switch. However, they are preparing to release Nintendo Switch Online this September, which will include a set of NES games that will be available for a periodic fee, among other perks. Kind of like Netflix does with movies. Apparently, if you give the ability to play NES games with other people, apparently it'll give you the ability to play NES games with other people online. Here are a few short articles for further clarification. I'd be interested to know your thoughts. And he lists an article for the Virtual Console and Nintendo Switch Online. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. Alright, Hemrock, let me be blunt about this. I don't like what Nintendo's doing. I don't like their current business model. I don't like this idea of having a paid service. I think it's a step up above Xbox charging you for the internet just to have the internet. So at least there is some sort of game access provided. But, you know, if you've been with Nintendo for so many years, a lot of these games you have already. You've got them already. You don't need them. You don't need them. All right? In order to convince me that this is a viable option, I need to see a list of exactly what titles this includes. Because if it comes down to financial feasibility. So let's say I'm going to go out and buy, 10 games over the next year. And then the dollar value of those games, if the dollar value is really high, like if I'm going to buy like Metal Storm, that's like $100 or $200. If Metal Storm isn't included on that list, then maybe it becomes a better deal. But I still don't like it. As far as the Nintendo Switch as a whole, my son wants a console. He wanted a Wii U, and we skipped the Wii U. So I'm not super interested for myself, but we might get one anyway and give it to my son for Christmas. The Switch will have been around for a year or so, a year or 2 years, however long it's been by that time. I don't like to get consoles when they first come out because first generation consoles, if you want to be an early adopter, you're going to pay the premium. They got bugs. They need to get fixed. The only instance I can think of where the first generation was a step up was with the PS3, when the first generation could play the PS2 games. But then again, those were like, what, $600, something like that? I can't remember how much they were, but it was a lot. So let's let it sit. I'll get one for my son next Christmas. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. When it comes to Nintendo, I don't know. Like, I want to play Breath of the Wild at some point, because people rant and rave about that game. And I want to play Mario Maker at some point, although that's been around for, a good while now. But I hate the amiibos. I do not like the fact that in-game content is going to be dictated by amiibos. It's like Nintendo, with their whole concept of controlled scarcity, they're applying that to digital content. Like digital downloads now have a physical scarcity, and I think the amiibos, although what they give you in game is in a lot of cases very small, the amiibos have become the world's most expensive video game DLC, and I'm not down. I'm sorry, but Breath of the Wild is a step up. The fact that they've got a solid title that's like, this is a good game that's worth playing. Let's see more of that, Nintendo. That's what I want to see. As far as playing Nintendo games online, I don't know. It broke my heart when the Wii's networking capabilities went down. That broke my heart. And I see that happening with the Switch one day. And I know no systems are going to stay around forever, right? It's unrealistic to think, like the PS3 that still gets online, but it's unrealistic to think it's going to be able to forever. So I don't know. I feel like a curmudgeon-y old man whenever the Switch comes up, but I'll probably get it eventually. I'm more interested in a Switch than I am a PS4 or an Xbox One. Thanks for writing in, man. It's always good to hear from you. Let's check out some of the comments over on the YouTube channel. On last week's episode, Big Game Time, What's on My Shelf left a comment that said, first-person swordplay, check out Makin' X on the Dreamcast. Thanks again for the no list. Seriously, I'm kidding, but it would be easier assaying the bounds of your Atari kingdom with this knowledge. It's okay, I'll let you off this time. Here's another blind recommendation for you, Mountain King. For someone who plays a lot of repros, you probably realize that there aren't cheap AliExpress-like options to buy repros for those pre-NES era games. Those are pretty cheap in general. Those games are pretty cheap in general. I'm guessing not many people are clamoring for that stuff. Ever wonder how long these sellers will offer options for NES, Sega Genesis, and Super Nintendo repros once interest starts evaporating? Why create a supply when there's low demand? It's an interesting thought to ponder that the game market now shows increases in prices of GameCube and Dreamcast games. PS2 and Xbox are still pretty cheap though. Got a lot of stuff here. That's a lot of good stuff in this comment. So let's go to Atari for to start with. Mountain King looks like an awesome game. I saw that show up in Gaming Palooza Empire a couple weeks back. I did a post on TigerClawTV.com showcasing that one. Yeah, Mountain King looks pretty sweet. It's got some scrolling, some platforming. Pretty sweet game. I would definitely pick that up if I found it for anything cheaper than the eBay price. Because if you want to just get that loose on eBay, I think it's about $10. Which I'm not opposed to paying $10 for a good game that I'm going to play, especially since the Atari is my favorite system right now. But there's too many $5 options to go that route at this time. But it looks like a great game. As far as reproductions are concerned, yeah, reproductions for the Atari are a strange beast because on one hand, you're right. If you want a reproduction for Atari, you're going to pay about $30. I mean, if you want one on demand right now today, I saw one for being auctioned off, like a pre-owned reproduction for $15. It was the cheapest I'd ever seen a reproduction go for, and it closed at like $15.50 or something. On the other hand, there's more reproductions available for the Atari, I think, than probably any other system. But that's a bold statement. It really is. If you go to Atari Age, and you're talking about Mountain King, you're pretty Atari savvy, I take it. If you head over to Atari Age, there's a lot of repros. I mean, there's a lot of repros that are packaged and ready to go. As far as supply and demand are concerned, I'm always surprised at how this goes. I was shocked when Mario games started getting really expensive, although in retrospect it makes sense. I was shocked to find that I could get repros for $3 to $4 for Sega Genesis games. I don't know what's going to happen. I think here's what I think. If you think back to, when was this? 2004? I remember going into a GameStop and there being cardboard boxes labeled Dreamcast stacked from the floor to the ceiling at $20 a piece. I wanted one, but I didn't buy one. I think I even had the $20, but money was tight then. Anyway, I didn't know that those were going to be expensive one day. This was already past the Dreamcast life cycle. It's just an example of something that was readily available one day, and then in the future it was expensive, and now I kick myself for not being forward thinking. So let's look at what's readily available now. Now we've got PS2 and Xbox, and we've got Atari games. Well, I've been noticing some more chatter on Atari games lately, but I don't think that's going to translate to more expensive games. I think Atari the only difference in price is we're going to see on those concentrated, hard-to-get titles. PS2 and Xbox, on the other hand, I think in another 5-6 years, maybe 7 years, I don't know. At some point, those games are not going to be as prevalent anymore. That's just what I think. So I don't get out game hunting nearly as much as I would like, but I'm picking up PS2 and original Xbox games at any given turn now. And when the opportunity arises, I snag one. Thank you for writing in. A lot of good stuff in that comment. Kaiser Cade, my good friend, Retro Kaiser. He wrote. This is what he wrote, son. He wrote. I owned a Neo Geo. I even sent you one of my old games when I got rid of that system. Yes, that's true. Wasn't that yeah, it was an AES game, wasn't it? Yeah, you're right. I botched that. On the other hand, I didn't know anybody here. I didn't know anybody locally who had a Neo Geo. But that's true. Well, here's a question for you, Kaiser. Did you own a Neo Geo when they were new and hot? Like, did you buy one in box, or was it something that you bought in your later years as a collector? I don't know. I'd be interested to hear. On the unboxing of Ninja Gaiden, Desmond101 writes, "Great game, though tough as nails, though. I need to get this one. Recently picked up Panzer Dragoon Orta for the Xbox. The graphics are still impressive on that system." Here's a question for you, Desmond101. What's the deal with Panzer Dragoon? I've heard people talk about those games since the dawn of time. Never played one, never looked them up. That's something I gotta fix. I know it's one of these things where parts of the series are difficult to obtain. Like, I think it's Panzer Dragoon Saga on the Sega Saturn. Whatever the Sega Saturn one is. I remember Jerry Terrifying telling me many years ago that was a good game. I think at that time I was arguing against the Sega Saturn, but he was like, "Nah, bro, there's good stuff." And that was one of his examples. So thanks for that. All right, let's see. What's on My Shelf writes, I listened to some of those songs again, and the recommendation might not entirely be in full effect here. I think when I bookmarked those tunes, I was happy to find someone experimenting with the Game Boy sound chip. I think that site is well over 10 years old. I bookmarked it in 2006, 2007-ish. Either way, I thought since you were on a chiptune kick, you'd like to experiment with new sites. I'm still looking for this other Game Boy tune musician who my friend introduced me to around the same time. I think they posted stuff on Facebook. They have a song called Sunny Walk or Stroll or Sidewalk. It was really good. It's driving me nuts to find it. Yeah, man. Trying to find a chiptune artist that you can't quite remember, it's tough. It's really tough. It's not the same thing as like trying to find a mainstream musician you can't quite remember. KT Johnson on the Dragon Power video writes, "Sadly, I never got around to hearing about this game." You know what? You didn't miss anything. Desmond101 writes, "The flea market circuit sounds really cool. I love going to places like that. As a kid, I don't think I remember seeing this game around. Definitely heard about it on the internet later on, though." Yeah, man, I miss the pawn shop. Going to the pawn shops so much. I really do. I remember the one that I frequented the most, the one I talked about in that video that had like local Latin music on cassette tapes right next to the Nintendo games. I remember every time I would walk in there, I would look behind the counter at this 12 gauge that the shop owner just had leaning up against the wall. And every time I went in there, I looked at it. It's just like, oh, there it is. He could whip that thing out and just blow holes in people at any time. I don't know. That's just something that captured my imagination when I was younger. This is an interesting one. So, it looks like Desm went back onto some of my really old videos. The Spy Hunter video and the Ninja Senki video. Now, those were from my run on RetroWare TV back in 2010 or so. Spy Hunter, he writes, "Classic game. I always wanted to get to the boat level, but never could. The arcade controls are iconic. There was also a cruddy sequel in the arcade. It's hardly worth a mention. Good review." Thanks, man. You know, I always thought that the definitive version of Spy Hunter was the NES version. That's just because, that's I wouldn't say it's just because, but it's mostly because of nostalgia, because that's what got me into the series. And tracing down the arcade game, if you're going to play the arcade game, it's got to be in the arcade, because it had a steering wheel and it had a pedal. You can't play it in you can't play any sort of emulation or any sort of reproduction or anything like that. I had it on the Game Boy Advance, and I was just like, I remember being really excited to get Spy Hunter in the Game Boy Advance. It was like a double cart, Spy Hunter and something else. I can't remember what the other game was. And I remember firing it up and just being dumbfounded at how unplayable it was. And I think that might be it. I think that's everything for this week. And that's the fail bag, guys. So hey, whatever has brought you here, 54 minutes and 30 seconds into the podcast, thanks for spending some time and hanging out. I really appreciate it, especially when it comes to podcasts. There's a lot of stuff out there. A lot. So I appreciate the time that you spend here as opposed to anywhere else. And that really means something. So as you go off into this next week, I just want to send some well-wishing with you. Keep at it. Keep doing what you got to do, man. Because especially if you listen to those Vancasts from earlier this week, sometimes you just have those mornings where you're just dragging and there's nothing left. And I'm here to tell you that you got to find it. You got to dig deep, get the stuff in the basement, and make it through your week. I'll see you guys next Monday. I'm rooting for you.